Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the DeSimone Deals, the Exit Strategy Podcast. Uh, we delve into lots of issues of how to help companies prepare for their eventual transition or exit. There are multiple issues that need to be addressed in order to maximize your outcome and to make your business transferable and make the transition as seamless as possible. As usual, I bring in guests to help fill in the blanks of stuff that I don't do. I help sell businesses, but they need to be ready to be sold. So I'm bringing in a guest today that his name is David Liddell from Liddell Consulting. He is a expert in leadership. He works with teams on developing their leadership capabilities to solve growth issues as well as just operational issues. And in my case, making sure the business is transferable. He also is the author of the book Simplicity Driven Leadership: Three Key Principles to Help a Business Thrive. David, welcome to the podcast and fill in the blanks of anything I may have missed.
Well, great. Thank you. Great, wonderful introduction. Thank you for having me on the podcast today. No, I think you hit it pretty hard. The areas that there is a leadership focus. The nucleus is helping organizations drive the performance through people, and that happens through leadership. So everything we do is around executive coaching work, leadership development teams, groups of people working with leadership teams, helping them with their performance, meaning how well they work together, and of course, their strategy.
So I want to dive right into this. And since this is the Exit Strategy Podcast, when you're working with clients and in your history, in your experience, typically do you see ownership getting wrong as they prepare for an exit and transition?
There's probably various things, but the one that tends to bubble to the top is, and this is pretty common because owners, founders, they think the world revolves around them, and it does for a long time. But as the business grows and they start thinking about an exit, they've forgotten that they won't be there forever, and they don't think about the leadership behind them. They think about the decisions they make. They think about how they shape the future of the business, which again, it happens, but they do forget that if you're going to have a healthy business and move through a transition, a lot of it comes down to the leaders in the business who can continue to carry that business forward. So, do they get it wrong? Maybe that's the that's the right word, but they just don't think about it. And I think it's just a fundamental it's just part of how they built the business. So I think what they need to think about is, well, okay, I make a lot of decisions. I shape the future. I'm going to prevent the business from going in the wrong direction. Yes. But do I have people around me? Do I have the right group of people around me that can make sure that continues in the future? So bottom line, it's the leadership readiness piece.
And when you see that issue, how much of it is them not hiring the right people or versus not trusting the people that they have?
That's always a good one because every organization say we hire the best people, and they certainly try to. So I would say, as a something that happens not very often, typically they're hiring the right people, because if they've hired the wrong person, they know pretty quickly if they're going to fit or not. It's usually the trust piece. Do I trust people to be able to run my business? Business owners, founders, it's their baby. They bleed the logo colors. That's who they are. It's all about them. Their identity's wrapped up in that. So trusting others to make those key decisions is super, super difficult. And, for some, those who are natural at trusting others, a little easier, but it's still difficult because you have to let go. You have to commit to that. So I would lean more towards trust, building those relationships, and building leaders so that that trust and confidence is there.
When you start in that process with nobody, they don't have that trust factor and they haven't really built the leadership capabilities yet. How do you approach that with the owner to get them out of their own mindset and to think differently?
I think the first thing there is ensuring that the owner, the founder, understands that, one, they need a team around them to be able to succeed in the future. And that team needs to think about themselves as the first team. If you think about how organizations are structured, they're all structured similarly. You have different silos or functional areas in the business, and the heads of those functional areas are critical. They need to make sure that that particular function is working well, people are following. But oftentimes the founder does not think about those heads as their leadership group, their leadership team. I don't care what you call them, SMT, leadership team, executive team, doesn't really matter. Who's that team's going to support you. And he or she needs to think about that team as the first team. And each person on that team needs to think about that as their first team, meaning this is the group in the company that's going to help set direction, lead the company, build the culture, create a culture of accountability so we're all moving in the right direction. So that's probably the first thing you've got to do. And then you need to evaluate in that. Once they realize, oh, okay, that's how we need to think about it, then you need to evaluate how well that team is built, structured. And there's going to be gaps in there. Most organizations that I found that are ready to be sold or the founder wants to get out and exit, they're already successful. They're already a successful organization. The question is, do they realize that not everything they're doing is helping their success, that some of what they're doing is holding them back, and they might need to unravel some of that or change some of that to continue to move forward?
What are some of the ways that you help owners identify because I've dealt with this. Business owners are relatively successful.
Mm-hmm.
There are some stuff they're probably not doing correct, but because they're successful, they believe every decision they've made must be the right decision. How do you help them take a broader perspective? And I use the phrase, how do you have them look at the business as if they're going to buy it for the first time, and what will they pay for that? How do you get them to get up to that level and say, okay, let's reevaluate the decisions we're making. Is it the right way to look at this, and how do we change it?
Yeah. It's for every owner it's different, of course, because every owner has a different personality and a different level of trust. The first thing I do is I have to make sure I understand this leader. Who are they? What are they all about? Do they trust? Do they see the value in people and in leaders? So you get, that's the first thing you have to do to know what your entry point is to have that conversation. I think, probably the first thing after that, or right after that, it's going to be understanding their perspective on how their organization really works. And yes, many of them, to your point, every decision I've made has made me successful. It's like, well, no, that's not exactly true. A lot of the decisions, you've made a lot of great decisions, but you've made some bad decisions along the way as well. So unraveling, and, I would say the majority of leaders are reasonably, they put their egos in check when they're having a conversation with them because they brought me in, and they're willing to say, yeah, we've made mistakes here, here, but having that conversation around what has helped them get here and what hasn't. And if they can realize that, yeah, okay, 80% of what I've done has been successful, but there is 20% that, boy, that really kicked our butt. Making sure that there are lessons learned from that, or at least we're having that conversation. Now, if those conversations in the beginning don't go well, it's going to be a longer road. So you have to pace that owner to make sure that you bring them with you. Because if I came in with a 2x4, that's never going to work. I mean, these are founders, these are successful people. They know what they want. They know how to get there. If you challenge somebody too aggressively, that's not going to work. So it's a process. It's a process of understanding, learning, realizing where they are. And then I find the entry points to say, okay, so you recognize there's some challenges here. Let's talk about how we can address those. So that's really how you do it, because if you think about it, even your own business, it's taking you a long time to get here. There's a lot of history there that you can't disregard any of it.
So let's step back a little bit. Same topic though. So you walk and you start having conversations. What are some of the warning signs they say, okay, there are some issues here that's going to hold them back from a transition, or hold back or reduce the value of this business because they have these leadership gaps? And
yes,
and how do we help business owners start to self-identify, say, hey, I need help because I have these these things? What are your top three warning signs?
There's probably dozens of them, but I'd say kind of the top three. one of the things I'm often asked to do is help organizations build a strategy, a plan for success going forward. And one of the, you've got to make sure a leadership team, the founder, their leadership team, and other leaders are tied into a plan for success that goes forward.
Mhm.
If one doesn't exist and it's residing in the head of the owner alone, there's nothing in writing. That right there tells me we have a huge issue, because people are going to do the best they can to make sense of where they think the business needs to go. But if there isn't consensus and alignment in thinking on what the future looks like, how they're going to get there, what they're trying to achieve, what strategies need to be deployed, if there isn't something there, that in itself is probably one of the biggest. Uh, the other one is decision making, as you probably recognize, and I'm sure you see it today. Too much of the decision, I'm not saying all of it, but too much of it still resides at the level of the founder or the owner or owners, or or partnership group, or with some key executives. And you can tell they are bottlenecks. They are the ones slowing the business down, because everything needs to flow through them. Uh, what I'd like to see is cascading of goals, objectives, expectations, but also decision making and authority. Let's push that down. If I don't see that, some uniform capacity down through the organization, that's certainly a red flag for me as well. And then probably the third one, if you're going to pick a top three, is there needs to be a unity, a collective ownership of outcomes and results with that most senior level in the business. And yes, it ties back to the strategy, but having a plan that is strategic in nature, that's great. It's the execution that matters more. And if the team isn't executing, that collective ownership isn't there, meaning someone in one particular department or silo says, yeah, I don't care about that. I need to achieve here. Those are the sorts of things. And when I come into an organization, I'm interviewing not just the owners, but it's going to be the team. Let's talk
Mhm.
about what's going on here, what's really happening. And you pick that up almost immediately.
How does a business owner identify that there may not be consensus? And I'll give you an example. I worked with a company a while ago, and I have got the opportunity to sit in on a staff meeting, and the CEO said, "Hey, what did you think of this?" And I said, "They're just waiting to hear what you say." And he said, "What do you mean?"
Yes.
They said they all kind of like give perfunctory answers until they hear your opinion, and then they
Mhm.
all kind of parrot your opinion back. And so he didn't recognize the fact that he wasn't getting real feedback. He wasn't getting real executive presence and executive decision making and advice. He had a bunch of yes people.
Yes.
How do you help? And so he was oblivious to it. Maybe you can't be oblivious. Maybe you can't figure out unless you have someone come in. But how do you help business owners say, hey, if you ask them a questionnaire before you meet them, like, is this happening? Do you see this happening in your business? Like, say that will say, you know what? I'm not as buttoned up as I think on leadership.
Yeah, certainly one of the ways is just exactly what you did, sitting in on a meeting, seeing how it functions, watching the most senior leader or the founder operate. And I tell CEOs, I've had this said, well, Dave, I was just making a suggestion. It's like, well, I'm gonna educate you here for a second. Bear with me. CEOs don't make suggestions. Founders don't make suggestions. It's a directive, and you have to remember that. And that's something. So that's not something you're going to make them aware of overnight. Some people are very self-aware and they do pay attention to their surroundings and they're able to read the room. I think that's a small percentage of people that have that as a natural skill or capability. I
Hmm.
think most people need to learn it. It falls into the category of emotional intelligence. Can you read the room? Can you understand what's happening? Can you recognize your own emotions? So for those who don't have it or don't recognize it, there has to be, you have to, you're talking to other leaders, you're engaged in different meetings. it's through dialogue. It's learning, and it's not to come back to the founder and say you're the issue, although in many cases they are. It's to say, hey, look, there's something you're not seeing here. And so, I mean, that's really how they do it. Now, will they see it? Will they recognize it? I still have CEOs I work with today that still struggle with it because they come from a background or a style that is more command and control. Yes, they're learning. Yes, they're trying, but it's not easy. It's probably one of the hardest things to do, especially even for those who are very self-aware. Uh, you know, Naturally, we don't like critique. We don't like criticism, but that's probably one of the most important things you can do as a consultant of any kind is being an honest and truthful mirror to the CEO or to the founder.
You just mentioned the command and control style leadership. Can you explain that? And then what are alternatives of styles that may be more advantageous if you're trying to prepare your business for a ultimate transition, either sale or to the next generation or to your management team?
Yeah, there isn't one perfect style, and some people think, well, no, let's eliminate command and control. And I say, whoa, slow down there. Sometimes it's really important to command and control. I would say limit that though. I mean, use that sparingly. If you have, as the founder, you carry a very big stick. Um, don't use that stick. You don't need it most of the time. And if we remember that the ultimate goal is we're trying to build a sustainable organization, and you need a sustainable or you need a capable leadership team that creates a sound culture. So, what are the different styles? Well, it really depends on the moment, and leaders need to be purposeful all the time. You're thinking about, well, I want to exit this business. What do I need to do? Well, you need a strong leadership team. I need strong leaders. I need capability that I'm not seeing today. Okay, good. How do you get there? Well, I've got an 8-person leadership team. Everybody's different. I need to come at this differently. If we're in crisis mode and I don't think anyone around me today is capable, there's going to be some command and control. That's okay. Sometimes it's, well, I need to build consensus today. Today is really about consensus building and making sure that I'm engaging this group and I'm pulling them out and I'm giving them opportunity for presence. So you might want to have a more uh, democratic approach or engaging approach. So there isn't one that fits every situation. Now, I think in general, if you have a plan to develop your team and develop people around you, um, there's going to be an overarching thought on how to get there. But think about every single meeting. What kind of meeting do you want to have? Do you want these people to engage? Okay, sometimes then it needs to be sit back and listen, ask questions. If you want a particular individual on the team to emerge, task them, put them in the spotlight, see how they react, act as a coach, right? Uh, I go back years and years, reading some of Jack Welch's books, and he said, at GE, his last 2 years at GE were just coaching people. That's all he did. He already had the right leaders in place. He didn't really need to run the business. He was coaching leaders to run the business. So you want to have a coaching approach. So it's, I might be rambling here a little bit, but I think what I'm saying is don't treat this like a one size fits all. What are your goals? Who needs development? Are you achieving it? Adjust along the way. And yeah, is command and control a bad thing? If that's your only tool in your toolkit, yeah, because you're going to get a bunch of people who are, to your point earlier, just waiting to hear what you have to say.
Have you ever seen a situation where an owner has the right team, but he hasn't really? This is a rambling question because I have
Okay.
I have a specific situation in mind. The owner has the right team in mind. I mean, has the
Yeah.
right team in place, has a plan in mind, but the team doesn't understand the plan, so they're not actually engaging in the same timeline as the owner. How do you get the owners to start to understand to let the leadership team in on their ultimate plans without spooking them that, hey, I am going to transition out eventually?
Oh, this is where nobody is aware of.
Yeah, because I've seen where the owners want to leave, they want to build the team up, and then
Yeah.
they're putting reliance on, this is an easy way to say it. They put reliance on Jim because Jim is my heir apparent. And when I present to the buyer, Jim's my key guy. But then Jim doesn't know that he's the key guy. He doesn't feel like
Yeah.
there's a path. He doesn't know there's a transition plan, and he decides to leave because there's a better opportunity somewhere else.
No, great question. And I think I found, and you probably noticed that founders wait too long to uh, start engaging and building a transition plan. I have a client right now. I can't mention who they are because it's I'm under an NDA, but they want to transition the business to their children, and uh, they said we're out in 3 years, and these are young people. And they've engaged me to say, help us figure this out. We want to be out in 3 years, which is now closer to two. How do we do that? And I said, well, you're up against, you're up against the gun here, but there can be a plan. So I think, getting back to your question, how do you get them to do it so that they're not spooking people? What they need to think about is whether they're exiting or not, they need to have sound business fundamentals, absolutely sound fundamentals. And they have to be thinking about, I mean, today, they want to retire in 10 years or exit in 10 years. Start today, build a business that can run without them. And that is the kind of message you want to send to your team, that, look, I want a company that can run without me. Now, is it going to take a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? I don't know, but that's what we need to move toward. And let's work on that. And that's where you start. You set the premise that this is not about exit. People are smart. Someone is 55 years old, they might want to exit in 5 to 10 years. It's very possible, or sooner. I've got owners in their 70s now, so it really depends on the individual. But set the business up now so that you're ready for anything that's going to come at you. It's really
So
kind of the bottom line.
there's always that I think it's the parable, like the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is today. Uh,
Yeah.
when is the best time ideally to start thinking about this, knowing that there's going to be some kind of transition? And I like to use the word transition because sometimes exit scares people. Like, I don't know when I'm going to leave, but having a
Yeah.
business being ready to be to transition or being transferable, when should they start thinking in that mindset versus, hey, I just got to hit the bottom line numbers?
I love the fact that you said, let's use transition instead of exit. I agree, because exit has a very definitive date in someone's mind. And most owners I know don't have that date in mind. So that's
Mhm.
good. I'd say if you can give yourself a solid 5 years, now you could do it faster, but if you could give yourself a solid 5 years, provided your business isn't completely out of control. I have a client today. They're an amazing company, but the business is run just poorly. I just, without saying it any other way, it's just run poorly. They're very successful, but I feel bad for the employees and the managers in the company. They're stretched so thin because it's just not run poorly. There's so much rework. So I would say, provided there's a reasonable foundation, give yourself a solid 5 years. Now, if you can't do that, if you were too late to the game, all right, 3 to 4 years, give me as much as you can so that you have flexibility. If you start now and you're ready in 3 years, great. Great. Then you have options, but give yourself more options. Don't wait to the last minute. It doesn't work well. And you know how valuations work. Companies buying today, buyers are very diligent. They know what they're looking at. They know if this business is going to produce after the transition. They know that. And oftentimes companies are not set up for that.
I like the how you talked about it having options and starting early gives you options. To me, that creates a lot of opportunities for success, no matter what your succession or transition issue is going to be, plan is going to be. Having, if something doesn't go the right way, and having other options to redirect, or helps. Having the market not ready when you want it to be ready, like your company's ready, but the market's not valuing it the way it should because of whatever reason. Being able to have options to do that. How do you get that point across is that this isn't about having the perfect plan. It's also about giving the ability to have options to adapt in case things don't go the way you want.
Yeah, what you just said reminds me of something Mike Tyson said. Everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And I may not, depending on the client, I may or may not use that analogy, but I say, look, things can go sideways. You have a plan. It doesn't mean it's going to work out exactly the way you think it is. Do you think the market's going to stay this way? Do you think, look what's happening with AI today? It's starting to change a lot in every single business, more, some more than others. But I think, and it's just accelerating. AI is a baby. So if you can bring very specific examples to the table, and if you think about people, the success of your business in the future, it comes down to the people you have. Is there a chance you're going to keep everybody? Yes, I'm sure a buyer is going to try to put golden handcuffs on key people. Absolutely, that's wonderful. But there's no guarantee it's going to work out the exact way you think it is. So you need to look at various paths. So I suppose I'm a little bit of, hey, look, here's some bad things that can happen. And yeah, that might sound like a little bit of a doomsday, but you got to keep them aware of all the things that could go wrong so that if something does go wrong, you have options. Think about the hurdles. I always talk about, it doesn't matter whether I'm coaching, strategy, whatever it is, let's anticipate the hurdles. Let's make assumptions about what can happen in the future and look at those. And that combination of assumptions will allow us to prepare for that. And if it doesn't happen, if you don't need it, great, no problem. I know you can't prepare for everything, but let's do the best we can.
So you said something that kind of didn't trigger me. It sparked a thought in me. There's two types of people I've dealt with in the past: uh, extreme optimists and extreme pessimists.
Uh-huh.
The one you just talked about, identifying the hurdles, when you're dealing with an optimist who does not want to hear about what could go wrong, they just want to hear about all the opportunity. How do you help that extreme optimist get rid of that blind spot and say, okay, we do have to contingency plan for what could go wrong so that we're ready for it and not reacting in a fire drill.
Wow. Yeah. And you're talking about a personality, right? You're talking about a particular style of person. Uh, yeah, you never. I never engage too aggressively because you don't want to burst that wonderful bubble, that
Mhm.
optimistic bubble. I mean, I think part of their success is they've they've decided that they're not going to allow things to get in their way and they just push forward. And I think that's a
Mhm.
great thing. So you don't want to affect that in a negative way. You want to keep
Mhm.
that, maintain that optimism because so many people in the business rely on that. It's no matter what happens, we're going to make it through this, right? So that's a wonderful attitude. I would never want to affect that. Um, to try to get them to see it, I think it's I'm trying to think of some very specific instances, but I think it has a lot to do with using real world situations, pulling from your own experience, doing the research, helping them see that it's not looking at what could go wrong as much as it's preparing for um, things that they don't know. Kind of there's known knowns and known unknowns.
Mhm.
They don't know what they don't know till it hits them. So I don't know if I'm answering it very well because
No, you got it.
it's such a
You're answering it the way
dynamic.
you would address your clients. Your headphones kind of, yeah, you got a little,
Better.
there you go.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I think it's really all about making sure the dynamic you have with the owner, the founder,
Mhm.
is solid and they see you as a trusted advisor. So I don't hit them hard in the beginning. It's as I've been able to develop trust with them over time so that they know that I don't have an agenda. Well, I do. It's their success. That's the only
Yeah.
agenda I have.
So let's go to the other end of the spectrum where I've dealt with this as well as you have the ultimate pessimist where it's always going to be this way. I've tried that. It doesn't work. How do you get them to break that mindset? Like, hey, just because you might have struggled to break your cycle or to create some better opportunities, that it's not always going to be that way. There is a better path, or there is a path that will
Yeah.
bring a light to the end of the tunnel. How do you get through to those people?
Yeah, there's probably kind of a combination of two paths. I mean, one of them goes back to what I said. I have to build trust with this person so that they can see the value, the advice that I provide. I don't make the decisions, they do. The advice I provided has been sound and it works. But I think then it goes back to the dynamic, but there's a different approach. The approach is, uh, what do you suggest? You're at a certain point, you're saying all this doesn't work, it's never worked, it's not going to work. Okay, what do you suggest? What do you want to try? Because they're the ones in the driver's seat ultimately. And it's funny, it's a paradox. They're asking for your advice, but when you give them the advice that you know is going to work and they're pushing back, you can't, you can't tell them, well, you're just being stubborn, I know better than you. I mean, I can't never let my ego get in the way. It has to be, okay, that's fine, so let's talk about pathways forward. What are those pathways forward? And let's look at the options and let's look at the trade-offs, the pros and cons, because everything, there's trade-offs to everything you do, right? There's no perfect decision. um, and I always want to tie it back to some type of evidence. When I say, hey, how are things? How's business? How are you doing? And someone says, oh, it's going great. Oh, okay, okay, tell me what's going on. Or how have you done progressing in this area? Oh, it's going very well. Okay, what's the evidence of that? What's telling you that? So grounding them in something that's fundamental, sound, concrete, and that's going to be evidence more than anything else. So, can you unravel a pessimist? No, but I think over time, if you ground them in stuff that's real and accurate,
Hmm.
you'll get them there.
You mentioned another trait that I see sometimes is the perfectionist, where they they get stuck in inaction because they want everything to be perfect. And you said there's no such thing as a perfect um, decision. Like I actually used to deal with that when I was in corporate, when we were doing building plans and forecasts. And I said, but the forecast is only going to be perfect for a second or two after we issue it. As soon as we start doing business, it's going to be close, and as long as it's close, we're okay. How do you get that mindset to people so they can make decisions and take in feedback and adapt as they move forward?
I'm thinking of one particular owner right now. He's been a client for a bunch of years now, but there's also, I see that thread in others, and I call it, you got to plant a seed. And it's, hey, have you thought about this? Or here's something I'd like to talk to you about, without saying you need to do this, it must happen, you're making a mistake. And it is, it has to become their idea. I don't care. I've got, there's thousands of consultants around, hundreds of thousands, millions of consultants around the world with great advice. It's only good if someone's listening. And if you try to, a perfectionist, you've tried to jam something down their throat, good luck. It'll
Hmm.
never, ever happen. So it's always about planting a seed. And usually it's months later that the idea resurfaces, not from me, but from them. And I get to say, that's a great idea. Let's talk more about that. And then off we go. But it takes time. You got to plant that seed, you got to water it. And it's not being manipulative. It's not, because the difference between influence and manipulation is purely intent. My intent is helping this founder drive their business forward, move it forward. And it's only going to go at the pace that they're comfortable. So plant the seed, water it. Eventually, it'll come back.
And that's probably good advice for owners and founders as they try to develop their team, where
Mm-hmm.
they may have the issues I'm talking about with you and an owner, they're going to probably face as they're trying to develop the different personality types that are on their management team.
Yes, no question. They do. And those, they already know the personalities. Oftentimes when I'm asked in to come in, they haven't figured out how to sort through the personalities.
Mhm.
That just happens. That's why I'm brought in. That happens to be my expertise. Or one of the things that I do is, okay, let's make sure we understand this person, what their motivations are, and for them, it's, hey, I've got this person, they're problematic. What do I do with them? And oftentimes that's the reason why I'm brought in for one person. But really, all they are is the canary in the coal mine. There's other issues in there.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, yeah, let's talk about this person, what's happening, how you interact with them, and the impact they're having on the team or the organization. And that's where things oftentimes opening up they were dealing with symptoms rather than dealing with the actual root cause, and we're able to dig into what's really happened. It's like, this is what's going on, let's address that.
I used to call that selling them where they're at. You could see all these other issues, but they were blinded by one particular issue. I'm like, all right, let's solve that issue. And as you start digging in there, then their mind opens up and it's like, oh, I see these other things now. Now that I'm not focused on this one thing that's taking all my attention, I can actually think about other things. Um,
Yeah, true.
what is it? So let's do a compare and contrast to help people identify where they are. What did transition ready leadership team look like versus one that's not ready for transition?
um I think the ones that are ready, like, I think fundamentally they have to I think I said it earlier, they have to recognize that they are the first, that is their first team. And I think if everyone recognizes that there's a unique value in having a leadership team. Some organizations throw it around willy-nilly. Oh, that's a leadership team. And then I go, well, that's, you've described leadership team for three different teams. What's going on here? It's like, well, it's kind of a loose. It's like, no, 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 hold on one second. The leadership team of a business is unique in that it has a broad view of everything in the organization. It understands exactly why that team exists, what its charter is, and how it needs to function together. So that's number one for me, that team is clear. Um, Everybody on that team is united toward driving the performance of the business overall first. Are my decisions in alignment with everything that needs to happen? So, do I have a good relationship with the people around me? Do the people I interact with on a day-to-day basis, am I willing to have those conversations that are challenging because we may not align day to day on the overall success of the business? So, those are certainly two big things. And is there a regular cadence within the business? Some organizations, teams meet weekly. I think that's a little too much, but some don't meet at all. It's like, well, okay, how often do you meet as a team? And the first question is, well, what team? No, your leadership team, Mr. or Mrs. Founder, that team, the team that you have around you, and it's too loose. So once you have that in place, is there a regular frequency and purpose for meetings? Not just meeting for the sake of meeting, but if you think about how are we going to be successful this year? What's that cadence? Why are we meeting? Are we being accountable to one another from meeting to meeting? And are we measuring our team success, but also the organization's success? So those are the big things right there. And obviously in there, the dynamics. Do people know each other? Do they know how to communicate effectively? Do they know how to deal with conflict effectively? I mean, that's all the human stuff. That's got to be in there. And some organizations say we're really good at it when they're not as good. But I've seen some organizations that come in and they're great. They're actually great at it. There's other pieces missing, but you have to be able to have difficult conversations with your colleagues. If you don't, and you're sweeping things under the rug, it doesn't work well.
So you say would you say a healthy leadership team has those unhealthy conversations and they're productive, they're not destructive, that you can be different, you can be transparent and direct, but not hurt anyone's feelings. Is that a good sign of a leadership team?
Well, 100%. The most effective teams that I've worked with, have helped develop, are those that know how to have those challenging, those uncomfortable conversations. Like they know something's wrong. And it's not just It's not speaking up in a meeting and complaining about a problem. It's not that. That's not good. It's saying, here's the issue. This is what I think is going on. It's not being mean spirited and going after somebody. It's talking about facts, results, outcomes, things that aren't working, and getting your ego out of it. And really, you're thinking about one thing: success of the business, the people around me, my team, your team, our first team. So yes, you have to be able to do that, because it becomes dysfunctional. Uh, Issues don't they're not put on the table. They're not dealt with. Issues don't go away. They sit there forever, and then oftentimes they'll fester into something that's much bigger than it needs to be.
I like hearing stories about success, and I also I like stories of any kind when it comes to business. But what is this an engagement or a story that you have where you the most proud of the success in the transformation that you're able to help a team make, and what did that mean for the team?
Hmm. Ooh, wow. Good one. There's so many teams I've worked with and I'm working with. The one that, as you were talking, the one just popped into my head. I don't know if it's the most successful, but it's one that I thought was interesting. Family business, of a husband and wife team. They own the business together. She's the CEO, and they asked me to come in specifically because they wanted to work on team function. And there were some family members in the business, family business, a lot of long-term people on the leadership team, uh, family members on the leadership team. And the first meeting was one of the most contentious, um, dysfunctional meetings I've ever been in, and not the most, but one of the most. And it was, I thought for a minute, honestly, I thought for a minute, ooh, what did I get myself into here? Speaking with the two owners, the husband and wife team, and the two of them had some challenges as well. I was actually referred through a family business consultant to say, I've done everything I can here with the family business part. I need your help with this piece. And I've been working with them a few years now, but that first year was a tough one because that team wasn't really a team. It was a group of people that knew how to run the business in their functional areas. And that was about it. And they were very good. I mean, they were high performers, A-type personalities. But that first meeting was going at each other, coming at me. I don't mean physically, but I mean, there was a
Yeah.
lot of challenge, some of it very unhealthy. Some tempers got up in arms. Today, the team's different. They've added members, but the gratifying part is that first year, so it's been about 3 or 4 years now. That first year, much of it was about helping them understand what kind of team they need to be. Why are they in place? Talking about what does the business need? And it wasn't even so much the building blocks. It was just clearing the air of a lot of the old stuff, the old luggage that people carry around, and surfacing those issues that were there. And some of it was a lot of it was one-on-one, a lot of it was team. Today, we've had multiple strategy sessions. Like the last 3 years, we've had strategy sessions. We have quarterly meetings as a team. I've done leadership development with this group. They are truly functioning as a team focused on outcomes, results, and they've accomplished a massive amount. They had some real key goals, and within their industry, specifically the last few years were brutal. And they were in the top 1% in their industry, meaning in terms of their growth. They didn't grow a lot. They were in the single digits when a lot of their peers were going backwards. So they did a lot of the things that were right. Now, do they have more work? Of course they do. They've added new leaders to the team this year. They've got to do some more work, but they are well positioned, meaning the foundation of the business is so well positioned to accelerate. And people say, "Oh, Dave, did you do that?" No, I didn't do anything. I gave a lot of great advice, counsel, coaching. They've done all the hard work. Sorry about that.
There you
They
go.
tend to pop out.
It was just the last sentence. Um, so you mentioned something that I wasn't planning on asking this, but it just popped in my head. When it comes to building leadership skills and leadership teams, how different is it when it's family involved versus a bunch of outsiders?
As in, when you say outsiders,
Like
you're
it's like a
talking about,
family, so you have it's the management's either all family or dominated by family
yep.
members versus it's a founder and he has all external hires that are part of his management team.
I haven't seen that myself. I'm just thinking I haven't seen that. I deal with a lot of family businesses. Oftentimes, what I've seen, it's you have a couple founders and a couple kids in the business, or a wife or a cousin in the business, and they're not the majority of the leadership team, but they could represent easily half or a few. Um, but the family element is huge. It is overbearing. It's powerful. And it's because owners of businesses, especially families, they can't separate themselves from the business. Christmas time, Thanksgiving table, they're talking about the business. So that family element, even though not all the family members are there, a lot of discussion happens outside. So that family element comes into everything, all the decisions, versus, you have one founder and then everybody else. The difference is it's that family element. It is powerful because the owners are not just thinking about themselves, they're thinking about this business supports my whole family. So that element is incredibly powerful in that it will shape the thinking. And what I have to do is say, look, yes, you've got the family business piece, but let's not confuse the two. Let's not confuse who owns the business and who's running the business. You can have all the family members here chirping in your ear, or maybe they're part of a family council that gives you advice or wants certain things if you allow that. But you got to make sure that the governance, how the company is managed well, because if that isn't going well, this doesn't exist. This family
Mhm.
business doesn't exist. So that's the difference. Because I have two partners own the business. They're not family members, two partners. Okay. The dynamic of, oh no, I've got this family business. The two brothers, the two brothers inherit it from the father, and
Mhm.
now two of their kids are in, or three or four of the kids are in different parts of the business. You get one of the kids is a bit lazy. He's just collecting a paycheck. You got this one over here is super ambitious and wants to conquer the world. You get the dysfunctional cousin over there. So there's all kinds of things that's going to exist no matter what I do. And it's trying to keep that. I've had some people say, well, I'm an owner in the business in a leadership meeting. It's like, and you pull them aside later on, like, doesn't matter. We're not talking about ownership. Those are two separate things. You run this part of the business. Remember that. Now they don't like to hear that, but that's the reality.
All right, we're running up against the end of our time. So for anyone who's watching this, this last question, what are some practical first steps someone who's seen this podcast can do in the next 90 days to get transition ready or start the process to be
Yeah.
transition ready?
Probably do a deep dive. Personally, what are my goals? It's hard to separate yourself from the business, right? Always. Uh, but what are my personal goals, and what do I think my overall timeline is? Not to put a date on it. You don't have to say January 23rd of 2028, but trying to get a timeline in mind so that as you think about how to get there, that transition, at least you know what it looks like. Now, if you get through that transition quicker and you want to retire earlier and you're ready, great. But give yourself certainly a timeline. Uh, Next, I would definitely assess your team. do I really have a team? Do I have the right leaders reporting to me who can take this business forward? Looking for gaps, looking for, you know, what is it that I need to be thinking about going forward? Um, and also think also vertically, top to bottom. Every organization needs a succession plan, and some people think, well, that's just the CEO. No, a succession plan is every leader in the business. If you're going to grow and succeed in the long run, you need to think of it in those terms. So I would definitely think about that, and then ultimately make sure that as you start thinking about what that timeline is, thinking about your leadership team, make sure you get to know that team. Make sure that you have a regular cadence, a rhythm with this group. Um, and this is in the first 90 days. You don't have to tell them what your intentions are, but you have to start having a vision or envisioning yourself. What could this look like? And do I have the right people around me? In most cases, you do. It's just a matter of making some adjustments along the way. But do I have the right people around me that are going to allow me to go through this transition successfully?
Excellent. Well, thank you for your time. This is really great stuff. I love when businesses are focusing on this leadership team because that just inherently makes them more valuable. It makes it easier for me to negotiate, easier for me to get them through a process. So thank you so much. If anyone is interested in learning more about how they can improve their leadership capabilities for themselves and their team, we're going to have David's contact information put at the end of this podcast. David, thank you so very much. And look forward to talking to you more on this topic in the future.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.